Okay, so have you ever felt like, uh, good people just never seem to win in life?
Hmm. It's a pretty common feeling, right?
Yeah, and it's like this question that's been going around online, and it's gotten a ton of attention, and I think it's something that we've all kind of thought about at some point.
Definitely.
Like, is the universe even fair?
Yeah.
So we're diving deep into this Reddit post called "Why Do Good People Never Seem to Win in Life?"
Uh,
by this user, Nomedia20079.
Catchy name.
Right. And the comments are just exploding with opinions on this.
Really interesting to see the range of perspectives on this age-old question.
Totally. So we're going to kind of sift through all that and see what patterns we can find.
Yeah, looking for some insights.
Exactly. Maybe even some surprises along the way about what winning even means.
Right, because that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it?
Totally. So in the post, New Media 2079 starts by talking about two friends, which I think a lot of us can relate to this.
Yeah, the classic good friend versus bad friend scenario.
Yeah, so the first friend is like this genuinely good person, always trying to do the right thing,
A goody two-shoes.
but they just can't seem to catch a break.
Yeah, they get hit with like chronic health issues, relationship troubles, just like one thing after another. It's like
Right.
life keeps throwing curveballs at them.
Totally. And then there's the other friend who, well, let's just say they're not exactly a saint.
Maybe a little less scrupulous.
Right. Like maybe they cut corners or, just not always honest.
Yeah, maybe bend the rules a little.
Exactly. But here's the thing. On the surface, it seems like they're thriving.
Like everything's coming up roses.
Right. Good relationships,
Yeah.
lucky breaks,
Yeah.
just like living the good life, at least from the outside.
It's that whole good guys finish last thing, right? We see it everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because No Media 2079 talks about seeing this pattern even beyond human interactions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like they mentioned seeing similar things happening in nature with animals even.
So it's like, is there something fundamentally unfair baked into the way the world works?
Right. Like, is it just us or is there something bigger going on here?
That's a big question.
And that's where the comments section just explodes with different ideas about this.
Because everyone has an opinion on this, right?
Totally. You've got people who are just like resigned to it, super cynical.
Like evil wins because good is dumb.
Yeah. And then there are those who think it's all about the system, like the way society is set up.
Right. The idea that the people on top often got there by being ruthless.
Yeah, like maybe niceness is a disadvantage in a dog-eat-dog world.
It's a pretty bleak outlook, but it resonates with a lot of people.
For sure. But there are also people who are pushing back against this idea that it's all predetermined.
Like, maybe it's more complicated than that.
Yeah. And a lot of them talk about how good and bad things just happen to everyone.
It's not always a direct result of your actions.
Right. But what's interesting is they also talk about how, sometimes being too empathetic can backfire.
Yeah, like constantly putting others' needs before your own.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Like you end up being a people pleaser, and you can actually get hurt trying to be good all the time.
It's that classic dilemma, like how do you be kind without being taken advantage of?
Totally. And then there's this other perspective, which I thought was super refreshing, the idea that maybe good people do win, we just don't hear about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because like the media always focuses on the bad stuff.
The sensational stories.
Exactly. Like if it bleeds, it leads. Right.
So maybe there are tons of successful, kind people out there just doing their thing quietly.
Yeah. Like maybe they're not out there bragging about it or seeking attention.
Maybe true winning is about something deeper than outward appearances.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like that whole saying, right? The best PR is no PR.
exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, are we so focused on the negative that we miss all the good that's happening around us?
It's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom for sure.
Totally. And this kind of leads us to another really interesting perspective from the comments, which is like, what does winning even mean,
Yeah, that's a big one.
One commenter even said that the object isn't to win the game, but just to stay in it as long as possible,
I like that.
right? It's like shifting the focus from like achieving specific things to something more about just like enduring,
Resilience.
Yeah, and like being able to adapt and just keep going even when things are tough.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. So maybe winning isn't about reaching some like finish line, but more about how you approach the whole race.
And there are different ways to approach that race, right?
Yeah.
Like different philosophical frameworks offer different perspectives on what constitutes a good life.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like you've got Stoicism, which is all about virtue, reason, and accepting what you can't control.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that.
So the Stoics are all about finding inner peace by focusing on what you can influence and letting go of the rest.
That makes sense.
And then you have hedonism, which prioritizes pleasure and happiness.
Oh, so like just having fun.
Well, it's not just about indulging in every desire, but more about seeking out experiences that bring genuine joy and fulfillment.
Okay, so it's more about finding what truly makes you happy, not just like instant gratification.
Right, exactly. And there's existentialism, which emphasizes individual freedom and responsibility and finding meaning in a world that can seem pretty absurd.
So existentialists are all about making your own choices and finding your own purpose, even if there's no guarantee of a happy ending.
Basically, yeah, it's about creating your own meaning instead of relying on external forces or some predetermined path.
Wow, so we've got like the Stoics finding peace and acceptance, the hedonists seeking joy and experience, and the existentialists forging their own paths.
It's a pretty diverse range of approaches to winning at life.
That's so cool. So it's really like what resonates with you, you know? There's no one right answer.
Exactly. What constitutes a good life and what it means to win is ultimately up to each individual.
Yeah, it's about figuring out your own values and setting your own goals and finding a path that feels right for you.
And this brings us to another perspective that I found really empowering, which is the call to action.
Oh, interesting.
So the idea is that goodness shouldn't be passive. Like you have to actively work to make the world a more just place where kindness and fairness actually get rewarded.
Right. Instead of just accepting that the world is unfair, maybe good people need to band together and try to change it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have agency, that our actions matter, and that collective effort can actually shift the balance of power towards something better.
Yeah, it's like winning could be about contributing to something bigger than ourselves, creating a world where goodness has a chance to thrive.
And this ties into a comment that sparked a lot of debate online, and I'm curious to get your take on it.
Okay, hit me.
So someone suggested that humans are inherently selfish and that those who exploit others will always have an advantage.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It really makes you think about human nature, right? Like, is genuine goodness even possible if we're all ultimately driven by self-interest?
Right. It's like, are we all just playing different versions of the same self-serving game? And if so, does that mean kindness is just a strategy, like a way to manipulate people?
It's a cynical view, but it raises some important questions about our motivations, Like, are we ever truly acting out of pure compassion? Or is there always some element of self-preservation at play?
It's deep.
Right. So maybe the real challenge isn't about reaching some perfect state of goodness, but about recognizing that tension between our selfish instincts and our capacity for empathy and cooperation.
So it's more about finding a balance, like
Yes.
making choices that align with our values even when it's hard.
And understanding that even small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect,
Yeah, and even if we mess up sometimes, we can always learn from it and try to do better next time.
Exactly. And this whole deep dive has been a wild ride, hasn't it?
It really has. We've gone from cynicism to hope, from philosophy to practical advice.
And it seems like there's no easy answer to this question of why good people never win.
Yeah, but I think we've learned that the very definition of winning is totally up for debate.
It's not just about external success, but about internal values, resilience, and working together to create a world that actually supports goodness.
And I'm sure No Media 2079 would be fascinated by all these different perspectives that their post has sparked.
Speaking of different perspectives, we'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, if you're enjoying this conversation, head over to our YouTube channel, Shauna Pelage, and leave a comment.
Yeah, what does winning mean to you? How do you deal with being a good person when it feels like the world rewards the opposite?
And if you like what you hear and want more deep dives like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast, Voices of the Soul.
Yes, we've got tons of episodes exploring these big questions, about life, being human, and everything in between.
We love creating this space for thoughtful conversation and looking at things from different angles, so join us on this journey.
It's all about exploring together, right? Totally. And at the end of the day, that's where the real winning is, I think.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not about having all the answers or being perfect, but about being curious and questioning things and, trying to understand ourselves and the world better.
Yeah, like embracing the messiness of it all.
Exactly. And finding those moments of connection and meaning along the way.
So true. And maybe if we shift our focus from like needing approval from others to feeling good about ourselves.
Yeah.
From competing to working together.
Yeah, maybe then we can create a world where goodness isn't just some naive idea, but like a real force for good.
Now that's a win we can all get behind.
For sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Remember, the conversation doesn't stop here. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep choosing kindness.